Skeletal muscle is muscle attached to the bones. We often call skeletal muscle voluntary muscle. Skeletal muscle is very long and narrow, and it contains many striations. Skeletal muscle allows us to move our head and limbs, and also lets us be able to talk and breathe along with many other things.
Smooth muscle, unlike skeletal, lacks striations. These cells are spindle-shaped and contain one centrally located nucleus. These tissues line the walls of the stomach, uterus, urinary bladder, and the intestines. This tissue is involuntary, and the functions include digesting food, constructing blood vessels, and emptying the urinary bladder.
Cardiac muscle tissue is only located in the heart. Cardiac muscle tissue contains striated cells joined end to end by intercalated discs. This tissue makes up the bulk of the heart and pumps blood through the heart chambers and into the blood vessels.
Nervous tissues are found in the brain, spinal cord, and peripheral nerves. Basic cells are called nerve cells or neurons. These cells detect changes in their surroundings and respond by transmitting nerve impulses. Nervous tissue contains neuroglia, which helps support and bind the components of nervous tissue.
Blood tissue is composed of cells that are suspended in intercellular fluid that we call blood plasma. White blood cells fight infection while red blood cells transport gases. Platelets are only involved in blood clotting.
Bone is the most rigid connective tissue, and its main function is to support your body structure and protect vital structures in the cranial and thoracic cavities. The red marrow in bone forms blood cells. Osteocytes, which are in thin layers called lamella, make up the bone matrix. Every bone cell is close to a nutrient supply. Materials move rapidly between blood cells and bone cells.
Cartilage is a rigid connective tissue. Cartilage provides support and framework and also protects underlying tissues. Cartilage cells are called chondrocytes, and they occupy very small chambers in the matrix. Torn cartilage heals slowly due to a lack of blood supply. There are 3 types of cartilage tissue: hyaline, elastic, and fibrocartilage. This is a picture of hyaline cartilage.
Cells called adipocytes store fat droplets in cytoplasm. As cells accumulate fat, they enlarge and their nuclei are pushed to one side. The function of adipose tissue is to cushion joints and some organs, insulate beneath skin, and store energy in fat. The amount of adipose tissue in the body reflects a diet.
Loose areolar tissue forms delicate thin membranes throughout the body. Loose areolar cells are separated by a gel-like ground substance that contains many elastic fibers. Loose areolar tissue binds the skin to underlying organs and fills the spaces between muscles. Dense irregular tissue is made up of many closely packed, thick, collagenous fibers. These fibers are thicker and interwoven and randomly organized, and these fibers allow tissue to sustain tension. This tissue is found in the dermis, which is your inner layer of skin. Dense regular tissue has very strong fibers that allow tissues to withstand pulling forces. Dense regular tissue often binds body parts together as part of tendons or ligaments. The blood supply to dense regular tissue is very poor, and this slows down tissue repair.
Simple squamous consists of a single layer of thin, flattened cells that fit together tightly and has both broad and thin nuclei. It lines the air sacs of lungs, forms the walls of capillaries, and lines the insides of blood and lymph vessels. Substances pass easily through this tissue. Simple cuboidal tissues consist of a single layer of cube-shaped cells with a centrally located nucleus that is spherical in shape. The tissue covers ovaries, lines the kidney tubules, and ducts certain glands like the pancreas and liver. In kidneys, its function is secretion and absorption. Simple columnar tissue consists of a single layer of elongated cells whose nuclei are on about the same level. Cells can be either ciliated or non-ciliated. Cilia extends from the free surface of cells and is used to move the egg through the oviducts to the uterus. Non-ciliated simple columnar epithelial lines the uterus and portions of the digestive tract. The thick tissue protects underlying tissues. Simple columnar cells secrete digestive fluids and absorb nutrients from digested foods.
Goblet cells secrete a protective fluid called mucus onto the free surface of this tissue. Stratified squamous tissue is a relatively thick tissue that has many layers of cells. As cells grow, they are pushed outward and flattened. This makes up your outermost layer of skin, which is your epidermis. This tissue makes a protein called keratin, which is accumulated when older cells are pushed outward. This tissue also lines the oral cavity, the throat, the vagina, and your anal cavity. Pseudostratified columnar tissue appears to be layered but is not. The cells often are fringed with cilia. Goblet cells are also scattered throughout this tissue. Pseudostratified columnar tissue also lines the passage of the respiratory system, and the cilia help to move mucus out of your airways. Transitional tissue is specialized to change in response to increased tension. Transitional tissue forms the inner lining of your urinary bladder, lines the uterus, and part of your urethra. Transitional tissue is made up of several layers of cuboidal cells. Transitional tissue forms a barrier that helps prevent the contents of the urinary tract from diffusing back into the internal environment.